So I guess, having gone through this whole process now and transitioned to this kind of new model, which you're right, some friends of mine in Seattle were early adopters of this model back in, I think more than 10 years ago at this point that they adopted a commission model. Um, we are seeing at TipHaus more folks expressing interest in this than we've ever seen. Folks are really, curious. How's it working? How's it going? What does it mean for the team? What does it mean for the bottom line? Can this be with, the minimum wage dynamics that are nationwide at this point? Something that actually helps independent restaurant groups like yours and formerly mine survive. And so would love kind of to hear some of your lessons learned about this transition and kind of what it's meant for the business now that you're on the other side of it.
I mean, yeah, I think, we've had a very positive experience, both from the perspective of the savings that it has brought the company, as well as how the team feels, no? Which I think, with you can't have one without the other. So, if we had improved sort of performance but decreased morale at some point, it would have caught up. So, I think the two need to go hand in hand, and that's what we continue to measure to make sure that the team is happy, and that the team is making good money at the end of the day. That's what's important too. Um, we we did feel that it was something we had to do, and I think a lot of people. That's why it's becoming more and more popular, because we've sort of tried to go through our entire P&L and say, okay, how can we affect this area, and how can we affect this area, and how can we affect this area? And we've sort of gone back and forth, and it comes a time where you just have to make these types of decisions if you want to continue to be sort of in the restaurant industry, and I think a lot of people will attest to the fact that it hasn't been easy the last 3-4 years. And yes, there's been positives after the pandemic, I think top line wise it's been good. But there's material impacts too that we've seen from a food cost perspective, from in Florida insurance.
Mhm.
Still, we've seen at least 50% increase in hourly wage across the kitchen, while our ticket average has only maybe gone up 12-13%.
Wow.
So when you put things in perspective, these are the sort of decisions that have a big impact, and I think allows us to continue to work on additional growth, no, which at the end of the day is good for everyone, so that we can continue to give our team opportunities to grow and career paths for them to continue and improve their lives. So, in general, those are the two things we were looking for, and luckily we've been able to achieve them. I know that the commission is dependent on the service charge, and so there are concepts or that might not be key to it.
Yep.
QSR concepts, perhaps, that need another solution.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's I know like in the Northeast they don't do commission, but they do like a benefit fee, or the restaurants call it differently, where there's like a 3 to 5% fee on,
Like a
they call
surcharge kind
it,
of thing.
yeah, it's exactly. But then there's issues now with certain states banning junk fees.
Hmm.
I know Minnesota is
Minnesota
one
just
of
did that.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just trying to survive. And I think it's at times it's state specific, it's city specific. Here in Miami, a lot more restaurants now are doing service charge, so it's normal. It's become sort of
Normalizing it.
normalized to a
Yeah. Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
extent, correct? But there might be cities where like nobody does it, right? So then it's like, oh, like, well, that's not the solution then. So yeah, I think it's very state and then city specific.
Yep. No,
Um,
like there's sort of a ecosystem dynamic. You kind of need a few
right,
folks to do it together. And to your point,
correct.
like being first is hard. If you're the first one in a region to jump into service charge, you're really putting yourself out there in a really challenging way for sure. What percentage are you doing for service charge in your restaurants?
We do 18%.
Okay.
We tried to do for the SuViche brand, we wanted to be at 16%,
Yep.
but the numbers
Uh,
didn't allow us to. We wouldn't be able to essentially our servers would have suffered and
got
they
it.
would have taken a big hit. So we had to go to 18%. And that's sort of from the models that we ran, that was sort of like the least we could charge. There's restaurants in Miami charging 20%. So again, we go back to sort of the area where you are, what type of restaurant you're in, or sector you're in. But for us, we're charging currently 18%
So that's across the concepts. It's
across the
all
concepts.
okay.
Mhm. Actually, there's one concept within Omakai, hand roll bar, where we charge 20%.
Okay. Is that a little higher end than the others?
Yeah, the concept just a little bit different, and it's a hand roll bar. It's so there's only a couple of servers, and the average ticket is like $30, but it's $35, but it's like a very high quality hand roll bar. So yeah, we just decided to charge 20%, and it's been fine. It's been good for the team
In
too.
terms of, the workflow now, as it relates to like payroll and things like that, has anything really changed as you've transitioned to this model, or is it all pretty much look the same from the team perspective?
For all intents and purposes, it's the same. There are some technical differences where the service charge that you collect and pay out, you pay out as commission, right? And then the tip that you collect and pay out is paid as traditional tip, like we're used to.
Yep.
So essentially, you're using two earnings code. One
Got
is
it.
commission and the other is tips. And because that's the way that we need to differentiate it, because how it works, essentially every 4 weeks we run a test on all our team members that receive commission and make sure that 50% or more of their wages are coming from commission. Because if not, you fail the 7I exemption, and you have to, it triggers other sort of things you need to do.
That's interesting. So
So
it has to be majority commission. If for some reason tips got really big, that would become a problem.
yeah, yeah. Or also if so there are certain positions, and that's why also there's certain positions like a host, for example,
Mhm.
where they so just to backtrack a little bit, but 7I it's technically an overtime exemption. So that in the 7I, if you're under the 7I commission model, you're exempt from paying overtime as long as you meet the requirements, which is 50% of their wages needs to come from commission. Obviously, you need to meet federal and state minimum wage and overtime wage and all of that. But so, for example, our hosts, that we pay them a higher hourly wage, they usually don't make or fail that threshold.
Yeah.
And so, for example, they can't work overtime because it would be very expensive. Because then the overtime rate is like it's based on their average hourly rate. It just becomes a little bit technical, but
Yeah. No,
essentially, yeah.
so there's complexity in this model that need to account for in terms of like ongoing accounting and other filings you need to do and things like that, it sounds like.
A little bit, yeah. And actually the other benefit too that maybe we haven't discussed is that because it is an overtime exemption rule, and we've found that instead of servers needing to have two jobs, like a full-time and a part-time, because maybe they want to work 55 hours a week, we're able to offer that now. They make a lot more money, obviously,
Mhm.
because they're working more hours,
Mhm.
and but they only have one job. No, so it's not that they need to. Maybe they can do a double instead of having to work here in the morning and having to go to another restaurant to work dinner shift and learning another menu, and it's sort of like we see it as a benefit, honestly, because me, I would much rather just have one job and work 52 hours, 55 hours in that job, and same menu, same people. If it's a good place to be at. Uh, I would much rather have that than having two jobs and getting to my second job and driving to my second job. So that's sort of like an added benefit that we've seen.
Hmm.
And over time, what we're thinking or what we're hoping for what that will happen is that we'll essentially need less number of servers. So let's say if today we have 20 servers to serve for a restaurant because they were only used to working 35, 38 hours, if we can somehow push servers to work 45, 48 hours because they want to, not because,
Hmm.
right? Not because we need them to, then we cut down to maybe 15 people, which then cuts down on training, less people to
Hmm.
manage, less people to, right? So that's sort of our long-term hypotheses of what will happen. We're too early in the game to know whether that will happen, but that's how we're also pitching it, in the sense of like, hey, like you want to work more, go
Go
for it.
ahead.
Because a lot of
Yeah.
before the restriction was like, I can't give you more hours because you will trigger overtime, and now it's like you want more hours here, here you go.
That's like an amazing mental flip. Like I just think like we managed overtime so closely. Like
Right,
it was you just tripping into it like blows up your economics so heavily. Um, to move to a model where it's like, look, if you want to make more money, work more shifts. And we don't care how many that you do. And I mean, don't be too tired to come into work, but like,
right, right.
like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's almost like it's almost breaking my brain a little bit trying to think about flipping to that mentality of work all you want.
Right. No, it's a great benefit, to be honest.
So have a few
So
employees started taking advantage of that
we
already?
have, yeah, we have some people that, are working 45, 46 hours. Maybe they do a double once a week or something like that, and they Friday or Saturday, and they'll be there all day and make a little bit more money.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. I mean, that's one of the benefits of the service industry on some level too, is, in
mhm,
theory, you can always find work, but usually to your point, meant you had to find work in multiple places
right.
to do that. But that's great. I can imagine like you, I think your hypothesis is correct as well. I think more people will take advantage of this, but
Right.
just take time.
Hopefully over time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.